Hello and welcome once again to the Roundtable, your weekly publishers and editors podcast here at The American Mind. I'm your host, Spencer Clavin, associate editor of the Claremont Review of Books and newly designated wordplay editor of The American Mind, first editor in charge of puns. I'm joined this week, as always, by managing editor Mike Sabo and publisher and president Ryan Williams, and as sometimes, excitingly, by Matthew Peterson, editor-in-chief at The Blaze, who joins us now to discuss a couple big news stories. We're going to start with the one that is currently blowing up X/Twitter as we speak. And part of the story here is about the coverage, but let's first just get the facts straight as we know them. A couple weeks ago, a little over a couple weeks ago, in August, a woman named Iryna Zarutska, 23 years old, Ukrainian refugee to the United States, got on a train in Charlotte, North Carolina. She looked like she'd been working at the pizza place where she was an employee. She sits down in front of, I will say at the outset, since this case has not yet been heard in court, that everything I'm about to say has a big allegedly in front of it, but it's on video and everyone at this point has seen the footage. She sits down in front of DeCarlos Brown Jr., who leaps up and stabs her to death. That's what it looks like on the video. That's what is alleged. This guy, DeCarlos Brown Jr., has 14 priors. He was known to be mentally ill, and he'd been basically caught and released a bunch of different times. This is taking place in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is known for its challenges, struggles with crime, its left-wing governance, and Brown is Black, which is a dimension of the story that, of course, has valence here because it was only really last Friday, a while after the actual event, that this footage started to make the rounds and get circulated. And it was circulated primarily, it seems, on social media because the story had been all but absent, crickets from the major legacy press outlets, the AP, the New York Times, just a blackout on this news story. So more than anything, people have been noting the disparity here as compared with cases in which the races are reversed, of course, and the sort of rolling media blackout on this has really been particularly striking and remarkable. Axios finally broke the silence on this with a classic, I mean, right out of central casting, a Republicans pounce headline: Grisly Charlotte stabbing video fuels MAGA's crime message. I like this version of the Republicans pounce trope in particular because in this case there is an actual knife wielding maniac who literally pounces in a video, but in fact it turns out it's MAGA that's pouncing on this. New York Times did very much the same thing and followed suit. This, of course, all dovetails with a conversation we've been tracking about Trump's increased emphasis on law enforcement, his forcing the left into a pro-crime position, his use of the National Guard in Washington, D.C., and his rumblings about sending it into Chicago. Since we talked last about this, he had a few different pressers in which he said, first, like, we're going to war, we're sending them in, and then kind of seems to have walked that back a little bit. He said, we're not going to war, but we are going to clean up our cities. Anyway, this is all part of the narrative fight going on about whether Democrats and the left have anything to offer on crime besides free all the criminals and we actually like murder on public transit. But I don't know. What do you guys think about all of this? Is there anything else to like dig out that I didn't lay up front there?
It's just there are a few angles on this, and it has some international ties that are interesting. I'll get to those, but first of all, it just seems like another issue where I think it punctures the notion that this monolith on the left is anything other than emergent behavior, that there actually are not smart people anywhere running most of this narrative creation, because you would think, having seen the video and knowing at least anecdotally and not living in a bubble, that the experience of urban crime and urbanish crime, despite whatever statistics Democrats want to cite as it's come down after post-COVID, has been, a ever-present fact of life in the minds of folks who live anywhere near urban areas or pay any attention to the news. So it's just another issue where the Democrats and their organs seem to be taking up exactly the wrong side of an issue, or trying,
I hate when my organs get on the wrong side of an
yeah,
issue. It's extremely uncomfortable.
bad. Is that even a dad joke? I don't know. It doesn't quite qualify. Um, but nice try, Spencer.
Hey,
Yeah,
thanks.
it's they're really trying to force the issue of switching the narrative on this, and it's just going to be so woefully unsuccessful. And they're trying to wield it against Trump in order to chip away at what they see as Trump's manipulation of the national conversation on crime and some nefarious plot. If you read Jonathan Last, speaking of leftists at the Bulwark, this is an aside, but I thought it was pretty amusing. Trump is emphasizing, this was his argument yesterday. Trump is emphasizing crime to normalize the presence of federal troops across the country, and the ultimate goal is so that he can deploy them around the midterms election in 2026 and somehow affect a coup of some sorts or intimidate people or whatever. Leave that aside. It's just another data point in the powerful disease that is TDS. But yeah, the Democrats have picked the wrong side of this issue, and I suspect you would think a centrally directed narrative process on the left would not have done this, and they seem committed to digging themselves into a deeper hole. Part of the CNN reporting was that, one of the really troubling things about modern media around this sort of issue is that cameras are everywhere and video circulates quickly online. So it's another fuel to right-wing culture warriorism. And I'll just note that in Canada, there's a story from yesterday, 2 days ago, maybe, about how Canada, I think it must have been a specific city, the way Canadian federalism works. So maybe it was in Ontario, don't quote me, but or a province, I should say, not a city. But they're now they've now restricted by law the ability of your home surveillance systems to look at stuff. Um, so your home surveillance system now has to be discreetly tailored to only go to the edge of your property. And of course, the reason is unstated by the politicians, but I'm sure in their heads, the reason is it's in a country that has imported in an insane fashion. 36% of its population now is foreign born and imported over the last 10 years or so. 15 million people, from the cameras that reach beyond your property and are able to be shared online when they show this huge influx of immigrants committing crime, would be very bad and stand in the way of the normal liberal narrative about immigration being an unalloyed blessing and all the rest. So
Yeah, it was
this
really
little,
cruel and sinister of those right wingers to demand body cams on police and constant
uh-huh.
surveillance of every criminal interaction. That was such a right wing talking point. For so, oh wait, I'm sorry, I seem to recall that was a left
Yeah,
wing thing.
and this is spreading across the West, of course. Chris Caldwell pointed out in his essay, which we referenced last couple episodes, about the UK, that they've just stopped collecting a lot of data. And this is not just the UK; they're doing it in France as well. They're just not collecting racial demographic crime data anymore in a lot of places. And so, what is this all careening us towards? I don't know, but it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, like Ryan said, I mean, this is, horrific. This is the result, obviously, of, I mean, you look at any major cities, obviously, there are major, major crime problems, not only in Charlotte, Chicago, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but this is kind of just the poverty of the modern Democratic Party. I mean, it's all, this Axios reporting. I mean, it's almost kind of unbelievable to behold that the story is not about, somebody being stabbed. By the way, somebody from Ukraine, I mean, I thought these people, like, were absolutely pro-Ukrainian to the last person, so it's kind of
That was
interesting.
last week,
Yeah,
Mike.
that was
That
the
was
last
last
week, so
week. Get your facts straight,
that
okay?
gets thrown to the side, right, so, like, the intersectional hierarchy, obviously that is not, the most important thing to these people. It's just, I mean, what kind of mind, just reading through this Axios piece, it's like, oh my gosh, like we just talked about, number of surveillance cameras, in public spaces, and that means more MAGA people can see what's going on, and that's a bad thing. I mean, what kind of like twisted mind, I mean, just thinks in these ways? Like, it's not about the crime, it's about the reaction. It's about Republicans noticing, Republicans pouncing. Obviously, the Republicans pouncing has been a meme for a very long time. But I mean, this is just like exhibit A of just how bad the media's gotten. I mean, they obviously carry water totally and wholly for the reigning regime. Um, and, it's why, I mean, you look at CNN, you look at, MSNBC, now MS Now, these people are failing. I mean, these big institutions that we think were, for some reason, liberals think like CNN, protection of CNN was actually written into the Constitution. Like, look, CNN may not be around in 5 years. I hope it isn't. Our media environment is changing, I think at a much more rapid pace now. Institutions that, we thought were just, sacrosanct and, above, failing are failing currently. I didn't even realize this. I mean, I guess Brian Stelter is back at CNN. I mean, that just shows you how poor, like somebody actually thought it was a good idea to actually hire that guy back. Like just
Hmm.
utter failure, just at every level. So, this just shows, and I think it was there was a Politico piece actually about this too. And then, like, instead of the stabbing victim or, any picture of crime or anything, it shows Donald Trump's picture on it. It's like, come on. I mean, so anyway, this is just one more example of just how bad our, legacy media has gotten, and why places like the Blaze, why places obviously like us and others are rising, just because people have had enough of this stuff, and it's time for something new.
Yeah, it's called MS Now because it's the thing that you're supposed to believe right now, as opposed to 5 minutes ago when you were supposed to believe the opposite thing.
Well, yes, but I do think there's a consistency here, at least one consistency, and that it was never about Ukraine, right? It was about defending Ukraine's right to make us lots of money and prop them up to support our interests for as long as we thought that was valuable. And Ukraine flag in the bio means you support that effort, which you've been told to support. But of course, it doesn't actually mean you care about Ukrainians. And this is a Ukrainian who was brutally slaughtered, and no one really cares. But what do they care about? They care about keeping the narrative, and the narrative is that crime is sort of like a mental health disease, or the fault of people who aren't criminals. And then there's the racial dynamics of obviously a black male killing a tiny white woman who's sitting there defenseless. So the optics of this are horrific. I mean, the fact that they released the video is what mushroom clouded this story, because you have a threatening, criminal behind just before the moment of impact when he stabs her, and she has looks like no knowledge he's even there. So the horrific nature of, like Ryan's saying, that what's caught on camera here is what you can't hide. You can't hide that in the digital space. They haven't been able to fully control it, and the fear with which they're all coming out. Like someone had a tweet along the lines of, "As I'm dying when I get stabbed, right? I'm going to say, just remember that this is statistically insignificant and does not represent anything else." And
Yeah, on my way to Kung Fu Panda 4 in IMAX, I think
yeah,
he said.
yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Um, I think um, I think that what's happening is real. Like the change is real. I just don't think they can get away with this anymore. I don't think anyone cares. And if reality is reality, and if we can't talk about reality, we can't talk about actual statistics. Then what are we even doing here? You can't function as a country, you can't function as a business, you can't function as a person. The more you stay in some kind of delusional reality, you can't look at actual events around you. So in that respect, things are actually getting really good. I think what Ryan said about statistics, by the way, also applies here. We have numerous examples in the United States of people not reporting or stopping, reporting to the feds or even locally, like in DC, and smudging the differences when it comes to reporting on crime and race.
And you just can't hide this anymore. And my example would be, I mean, I'll show it to you guys here, but if you can't see it home, there's a picture of Fox News, right? Why is the media so quiet about the North Carolina stabbing? And the Fox News anchor is pointing to 2023 stats where there's 117,900 incidents of white on black crime and 385,400 incidents of black on white crime. And then there's unknown 198,000 incidents of crime on black and 600,000 unknown on white. So, I mean, you can't, at a certain point, you can't hide those stats and you have to talk about them like adults. And that's not some like based internet anon edgy thing. This is reality. And if we can't talk about reality, we certainly can't protect ourselves. So I feel like the cat's out of the bag. The Overton window has shifted. And the more that they double down, sort of like Ryan was saying, the worse it gets for them. And if you want to play the narrative of, these evil Republicans talking about this murder and try to, I don't know, cover up just basic reality of American life today, go ahead, keep doing it, because I don't see that there's an appetite for that. And what I see is more and more people willing to deal with reality on the ground from the administration on out.
Yeah, I mean, it was Steve Saylor, right, who coined the idea of the crime of noticing. And it really is one of the most capacious and all-encompassing descriptors of the way that the people who write in the New York Times think about the world. That if you can criminalize attending to things, that's the same thing as fixing the problem. And I just Googled like a quick search here, Matt, as you were talking about unreported crimes, unreported statistics, because there is a whole genre of piece about I regret calling the cops on this black person. Sometimes when the black person was innocent, but sometimes when the black person has actually committed a crime. Here's the New York Times. Was I right to call the cops on a black man breaking into a car? Right? Like, this is a kind of piece that has been published again and again. So it is completely rational and normal and not radical or extreme to suppose that we only know the half of it. And it's not racist or evil to point this out and to talk seriously, as you say, like adults, about what to do with it. The other dimension of this is the part of the video leading up to the stabbing. And this is something that was really astutely noted by, I think, Kat Rosenfeld in the Free Press. She says, like, the video already looks like a horror movie before the stabbing happens. Like, just the conditions on, I guess it's the subway in this American city
Light rail. Yeah.
are abysmal. Light rail. Okay, right. I mean, this is the sort of thing that, like, I can hear Mike Solana's teeth grinding as I speak. This is the guy who runs Pirate Wires and is all about kind of techno optimism and being awesome and building great cities. Like, this is looks like a dungeon, this thing. And it's clear that if you are this diminutive Eastern European war refugee, you've escaped the hideous carnage of Putin's invasion only to arrive in a kind of American dystopia. Like, obviously, it's not the same as living in a country of war, but it's not a great situation to be in, to take your life in your hands every time you want to get home from work. And it happened that in this case, there was this very disturbing footage of what actually did transpire and the genuine tragedy, but the conditions on the ground are already abysmal. And that's what Trump is forcing with this stuff about the National Guard. Yes, like we've talked about, how he shouldn't send them into cities besides DC, which he has yet to do, by the way. That's something he's talked about, but it's only the hysterics who have been saying it's definitely going to happen. And he may yet, but as of right now, that part of it is really just a kind of nightmare scenario. But the reality, which is already nightmarish, is the leftist governance and its fruits on the ground. And that's what this is also about, is like forcing Democrats to defend the policies that directly create the scenario in which this young girl can't walk about safely in her own home, to which she fled because of her belief in the safety of the United States of America. That's a disgrace. That's shameful. And it doesn't have anything to do with race or even getting into the crime stuff. The cover up, then, of course, as Ryan rightly noted, is profoundly European. It's symptomatic of the kinds of things that right now in Europe are leading to like the collapse of societies. This is the sort of stuff that Chris Caldwell's writing about, where they import like 7% of the population overnight. A significant portion of that imported population is restless, young, male, and becomes criminal. And then the government tells you, or simply refuses to tell you about it, and locks you up for talking about it, for expressing anger, for dealing with it, for attempting to have a conversation. I mean, we're not there yet, but the kind of rage and frustration that inspires is what you're seeing now in Europe, and it's why like Nigel Farage might actually be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, because like the British people have simply had it with this stuff. I think Matt's right that it's collapsing in America relatively before it got quite as bad, because of this like just digital explosion, and because of the Trump phenomenon, and the fact that we can now see this stuff happening. You really can't criminalize noticing in this kind of ecosystem, in this digital sphere. So yeah, like please keep going, New York Times. Like continue to self-immolate before us on this issue, because I can't wait for the midterms if this is going to be the Democrat policy on crime.
Yeah, if noticing the reality of crime or noticing statistics more generally is racist, then the solution obviously is to remove the predicates of noticing, remove
Exactly.
opportunities to notice. Yeah. And we should
Yeah,
say
right.
that Mamdani, Rafael Mangwa had a good thread on this, I think today or yesterday. Mamdani wants to do away with New York City's or Manhattan's crime. Well, really, New York City in general, the five boroughs' gang database, and for precisely these reasons, even if he doesn't pitch it quite that way.
Of course he does. And this is like the place where we're going to get into talking about the economy in just a second, but a dimension of that conversation, of the national debate over like the cost of living and housing and so forth, is this idea that the left can pivot from its woke era into the era of abundance. We're going to build things now and make infrastructure plentiful and create policies that make it fun and happy and prosperous to live in cities again. And like, can the government do stuff, as compared to these nasty Republicans who don't want the government to do anything? There's a great piece that we will talk about in a second by Solana in the Atlantic, about how this is only a contrast to the Republican point of view if you imagine that the Trump decade never happened, if you imagine that MAGA never occurred, and the right is still a kind of libertarian forward Reaganite platform. Then yeah, I guess doing things with government to help the economy is a meaningful way to distinguish yourself and run against the right. But the more difficult problem for people like Mamdani and those who support him is that they have to bring along and win a significant portion of like people who literally are calling for political violence, of the folks that look at this situation in North Carolina and in other major American cities, and they say, yes, it's good. Like we love to live in cities where you might die on the subway. Like that is great because of the diversity or whatever. Like this is like a real thing that many people have been saying on social media, like not just the New York Times, but like actual individuals that the left now has to somehow fold into a coalition that is then going to make it like great to live in cities again. This is all, I mean, I don't know if you guys want to say anything more about this because I'm just ranting now. We should talk about the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but
Well,
it is kind of interesting.
I think it's important. I mean, I think it's an
Yeah.
important issue and it's an important moment in these completely off the grid, forcing the mainstream media without, before Trump said anything or anyone else. This was pure Twitter energy, and pure the crowd going, "What the hell is this?" And this is a symbol of everything that's wrong right now. And by the way, the other aspect when it comes to racial hatred and violence, the net effect of what they've done is to increase that on all sides. I mean, if you're 25 years
Of
old and
course.
you're not allowed to point out that that all this crime is being committed by Black people, and somehow being Black in America is a way to protect yourself from the reality of crime. It's crazy. I mean, what is that going to cause? It's going to cause a lot of people to go, you know what? I just assume they're all criminals, and even worse than the boomer mind can imagine. Thoughts like that. So if you
Yeah.
can't talk about
Yeah.
these kind of disparities out loud in public as adults and actually deal with reality on the ground, you're going to foment, the kind of race war that they seem to really want. And if you can't have hard discussions, then you can't have civilization. And so I feel like this is this is part of the deal. It's like one side, we're going to cover up everything about and tell them that it's all, basically at the top, the white, male's fault. And we're going to try to keep fomenting this war. But the idea that these are the peacemakers, or that justice, peace, reconciliation are somehow established by the side that's fomenting hatred and lies is crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that has to go out the window. And so I'm not saying everyone's going to get along in a big, beautiful, happy world in any society, but you cannot cover this stuff up like they have been to this point and not expect an enormous, massive backlash.
This is
And
so important. Yes.
the backlash is going to be worse than if you just had the conversation to begin with.
Of course. And we have been saying and saying this. The people that they've vilified and demonized for pointing this out have repeatedly, over the span of decades now, been saying that this would be the consequence of turning every conversation in America into a conversation about race in which white people are the villains. It's like the left went on this censorship and racialization binge. Like they were up at 3 a.m. deep in the K-hole. And then this backlash is like the thing that comes that you ordered at 3 and 3 in the morning when you were like deep in your cups and something shows up on your doorstep. You're like, I never ordered that. Like I didn't want this like
Yeah.
$500 like katana that I got from Etsy, and you're like, oh yes, you did. Like that's what you literally and
Very
and I
specific
was there,
examples,
bro.
Spencer.
I speak from nothing related to any personal experience, but it's like then your roommate is next to you and he's going, bro, like maybe you shouldn't order that katana. Like, what, and you blame the roommate, right? Like Republicans in this situation being the roommate, like these evil right wingers are telling us that there's going to be a white race war. It's like we're not telling you that because we want it to happen. Just the opposite. We're telling you that if you put these chemical reactants together into a petri dish, the result of that reaction is going to be racial animus. And if you want not racial animus, you should stop binging on ketamine.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the economy. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics has released a revision to its jobs numbers. Now, this is in principle a normal thing to do. I guess I will say that at the outset, that the job statistics are released by BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and then they are revised as more information comes in. However, there are a number of reasons why this particular revision is extremely significant. First of all, they've revised their numbers way, way down from key years during the Biden administration, especially the end of the Biden administration. Heather Long has put it this way. She says, we thought 1.8 million jobs were created between April 2024 and March 2025. In reality, only 847,000 jobs were created in that period. So that's a huge, huge downward revision. It means basically that at the end of the Biden administration, there was the result of zero job creation. It means that the Fed should have been cutting rates long before it has, and I'm sure we're going to get into talking about all of that. But the other wrinkle here is that Trump fired the head of BLS, the BLS commissioner. And this was one of the things that he was supposed to be doing as like an evil authoritarian takeover. This woman's name was Erica McIntarfer, I guess is how you say it. She was the commissioner of the BLS, and he said, I guess on Truth Social, that she had rigged the jobs figures to make the Republicans and me look bad. Now, I guess we should say that we don't know that that's true, but it certainly looks like a very plausible interpretation of events if you consider that during exactly the time that these statistics are relevant, people were telling us, no, the Biden economy is booming, actually, and we're recovered from COVID, and it wasn't that bad to shut the economy down. We've actually made our way back. Now there's a kind of ball up in the air, I think, about what will happen next. It's not clear to me, and maybe you guys know more or we can discuss it, whether this revision is a is the work of Trump's new people, if you see what I mean. So he fired the old people who do seem to have vastly overestimated the strength of the Biden economy. Now we get a revision that seems more plausible and consistent with what was going on during the Biden economy. But one thing we don't know, I don't think, is like who is responsible for that revision. Is it just the standard staff that was already there, absent the commissioner, or is it Trump's new commissioner, or what? But I leave that an open question as I turn this over to the panel, because I think this is a fascinating story.
Oh, just real quick on that. So, we saw this news this morning and was talking to the team about it. And first off, I mean, let's just say everyone knows these numbers have been cooked for a long time. It's ridiculous. There's
it's another
like,
noticing situation.
anyone like serious in that field who's brave enough to say it, and they all know the numbers have been ridiculous for a while. So again, it's the same topic we're talking about earlier, like Ryan's talking about with racial statistics. Look, this is happening when it comes to any unpleasant reality that the government doesn't want. We got to the point where I can just tell you 2 + 2 = 5, and we'll pretend and we'll play the game. And you have legions of bureaucrats to do it. A lot of those bureaucrats have left. Trump did fire people. This is the good kind of overturning of rocks that we need in the administration. And near as I can tell, I don't know. I'm sure that I think Patriots are in control in the interim, which is probably why we got this. But I was looking for who's the hero, and it turns out that this guy EJ Antony is not in position yet. He's waiting to be confirmed, and I was trying to figure out, is this guy like the hero who's going to go in and do the thing, and looked it up, and immediately I saw that he had a PhD econ, like a super smart. Heritage Foundation is saying like this guy's incredible. Art Laffer's writing about how Wall Street Journal, this guy's great. And then I looked to the left, and then I saw two things which confirmed that he's a hero in my mind. And one had something about him being like pro J6 or there at J6, and the other was he ran an anon account on X that said naughty things. And I thought, this is the guy. This is the hero. We're going to interview this guy. I mean, this guy sounds incredible. Get this man confirmed. He has bona fides. So an anon, hopefully coming in, who is clearly autistic enough and dedicated to the truth and the stats, right, to actually tell us what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I hope this should spark contemplation by the Trump administration across various areas of data collection, and to go do some double checking over the Biden years about what other statistics are being fudged. BLS is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. BJS, of course, is the Bureau of Justice Statistics. I think it's probably worth double checking everyone's work over the last 4 years, because the incentives, of course, with a decrepit Biden administration, because the head of that administration was himself losing his faculties, staff was in control. I suspect that the temptation was even greater than normal to, of course, paper over Biden's incompetence and bad numbers, and the re-emergence of Trump as a viable candidate on the other side will just juice all these temptations as well. So the question should be now on the government statistics side, what other numbers have been juiced? And I suspect this is not the only one. But your quick answer to your question, Spencer, it seems to me that this is just a normal revision. Because Antony's not in yet. Maybe the staff at BLS has been told in recent weeks to kind of get to the bottom of this. I'm not sure, but I think it's this normal quarter over quarter and then year over year revision of all this stuff, and it just happened to come out probably with pretty good timing for Antony's confirmation.
I think really BLS is really kind of, it sounds like a lot like Secret Service, where there have been problems for a long, long time. I think
Hmm.
with Trump, he's reacting to, probably, I'm sure, what he's heard behind the scenes. And yeah, he just needs to clean out the stables, and that's kind of what he's doing. Could he maybe do a better job of, explaining to the American people exactly how bad it is, and this is why he's doing? Probably. I think, like everything else, that's a possibility. But I think that's what he's doing. If you just look at, it just connects to problems. I think just fundamental issues in our economy overall, and this is just one subset of those. I've just kind of was curious, just even like what percentage of Americans right now, and this gets into a video that Ryan sent about, I think, a husband and wife basically, working, basically almost 100 hours a week, and they have to choose whether they pay their mortgage or, how much they can actually feed their kids that month. And that sounds kind of crazy, but, when you really look at mortgage rates, when you look at housing costs, obviously that has to do, a lot with immigration too, and, not only just quantity of the houses being built, but what percentage of Americans are even living paycheck to paycheck? And Grok basically came up with anywhere from 50 to over 70%. So 50% of Americans, that's 130 million Americans. At 70%, that's 182. And that's obviously been trending upward, I think, definitely recently. So, I mean, the idea, look, there are, I think, some fundamental problems within our economy that I think Trump is trying to actually deal with. This is, part of that. I just hope, obviously with Antony, who's hopefully going to be confirmed. I mean, he'll get, the right people in there to actually do what needs to be done. But this is a crucial thing that I think if the Republicans get right, that will, the Republicans will be in power for quite some time.
Yeah,
So
just to reiterate too, we're talking about 50%, right? 50% of the jobs that were, the last year of the Biden administration that were claimed,
yeah,
didn't actually happen. I mean,
right.
this is the kind of stuff that's totalitarian. I mean, it really is ridiculous. If you're that wrong all the time about these kinds of statistics, what use are they if you can have a 50% revision and swing with a statistic that is very important to set monetary policy for the United States of America? So, hopefully, this is again the era of children is over. The biased bully kids in charge, fudging numbers. Hopefully, it's over. But and we should be positive about it. I mean, it's great that this is happening. It's been
Yeah, yeah,
nonsense.
yeah.
It's been nonsense for a
It's
long time. So this is good.
it's a form of accelerationism when this kind of absurdity like just becomes so extreme. Yeah, just it's good to get these terms straight, Ryan. So to clarify, right, BLS is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BJS is the Bureau of Justice Statistics, BTS is Bangtan Sonyeondan, the Bangtan Boys, or the famous Korean, South Korean superstar K-pop band. And South Korea is the country from which many people were rounded up at a Hyundai factory. How do you like this for a segue, you guys?
Beautiful.
That was great.
So uh, you mentioned immigration as a feature of this economic discussion, so I'm just going to throw in one extra news story, and this will be an extra data point. A massive ICE raid, around 475 Korean workers were rounded up at an electric battery plant in Georgia. And then there's been a deal with Seoul's foreign ministry that seems to have allowed them to be let go. This is sort of an interesting dimension, part of this from a number of angles. First of all, we typically think of the immigration part of this as having a racial component. It's like about South Americans or what have you. But really, as the Wall Street Journal is keen to remind us, although often in the opposite direction from the one we move on in this podcast, this is an economic issue, right? This is about anybody from any country being here illegally and taking a job that an American might otherwise wish to do. And yeah, I mean, those videos, Mike, on TikTok, like, which I assume is where that video of that mom comes from, sort of reminds me of the video that we talked about a while back of the girl in Scotland with these two blades claiming to be defending herself against a foreign arrival. Because as we said back then, we have no way of like it's totally disorienting and impossible to know what's on the outside of the frame of that video. And similarly here, as somebody I saw commented, like somebody gets in their car and makes a rant about like what they're paying for their mortgage, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's so much stuff that you don't know about that particular actual person, right? Like if you want to know, like, well, how are they living, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yet the actual fact or the story there is in the virality. It's in the way in which this image, this video makes a lot of people say, yeah, I'm also struggling to make ends meet. And I do think that like when statistics are as fake as they clearly are in the case of this BLS situation, those kinds of anecdotal situations suddenly take on more importance than they've had in a while. They come back to the fore because the data heads, their whole kind of modus operandi is to delegitimize your anecdotal experience, right? And anecdata becomes like a bad word. But then when the statistics turn out to be just as manipulable and fake as the TikTok videos, then you really are in a place where you actually have to clear the board, clear the decks, and say, well, what's the never mind like the rhetoric game, what's the reality on the ground here? And the reality seems to be people are struggling to make ends meet, and immigration is part of that. Obviously COVID was a big part of that. Like I just this does seem like part of the accelerationism that Matt you're talking about is the collapse of like statistical supremacy in discussions about what's actually going on.
It's really, really important in a time when you're trying to establish some kind of trust in any institutions that
Yeah.
people get a handle on this. And this used to be part of the government, I think, that actually worked fairly well, at least coming out of the 70s into the 80s and 90s, where you really did have people who, as public servant, you compile the numbers, that's where you get your honor from. The government's always been tempted to, it'll never give you the numbers you need. Bureaucracies exist to give you unuseful facts and figures. But there was a sense of public, spiritedness or service at the best moments of, the last hundred some years of the administrative state, where it's like, okay, my job is to provide you with the truths about these statistics, and we are incentivized to find them. And it's only when you get the kind of crazy ideology that it really is trying to warp reality, people don't care anymore. Or if you had some, pointed political, a lot of political capital was at stake, people get tempted to fudge things. So I think it's like part and parcel of resetting the entire framework. And that's what you see, like all these stories we're talking about. I mean, you really are resetting the framework of things if you go to the stats. And you're also resetting the framework of things if you talk about the reality of racial disparities in crime. And this just we're getting back to reality. This is good. I mean, the first step of any kind of change, right? Like, what's the actual truth here before I figure out what I need to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I think you're resetting the change too. I mean, there was a Wall Street Journal editorial board op-ed, just talking about, oh my gosh, if these 475 people were rounded up, I mean, this is going to kill American business, and we just need to open everything up. I mean, I think that view, that like insane, over the top, almost like Randian pro-business view, I think is just, I think it's a good thing, just not really being taken seriously as much anymore. Like, how about we have to have a country? How about like that's not the highest good? Our production, or how many people we can employ. And how about, by the way, employing, Americans? I mean, like there is something called America, and there, are borders and sovereignty and actually other countries involved too. So I think that's another real benefit of our time, which is just, not taking some of that stuff as seriously as we used to.
It's
You're not,
also,
you're
yeah,
not supposed to talk about it. I mean, it's not even supposed to come up. It's like that's what I meant with the stats. Like you're not supposed to acknowledge that exists. It's enough they built the plant here, and it's fine. Don't look under the hood.
yeah, and the incentives on the immigration front, to speak of another of maybe the juiciest of all juiced statistics, uh, in great Keynesian fashion, this has been the case since sort of mid-century at least, is GDP. And so Chris Caldwell got into this in his piece about the UK. The Boris wave of huge immigration post-COVID was partly the result of him getting together with his economic advisors, and that they having a native aging workforce and looking to recoup after the doldrums of COVID. The solution on paper was we just import a lot more people. And the importation of lots of people is good for GDP at the top line level of GDP and the way it's calculated. Whereas in the meantime, you may lose your country and your civilization.
Yeah, I will just plug because it's relevant here. I did a close read episode with Chris. This is our Claremont review of books sister podcast, and I think it's coming out on Friday. But we talked about this event. This subject came up specifically because it was one of the most astonishing parts of the story that Chris tells in that piece. That what seems to have happened, if I understand it right, is that Boris Johnson's administration, which presided over COVID, read the decrease in immigration that occurred as a result of COVID measures as per se a drag on the economy. And that's because immigrants themselves, not the things that immigrants do, but just having immigrants is measured as like pro GDP. And so that it's never taken into account like whether the immigrants get there and rape little girls or whether they get there and assimilate and become upstanding members of society. It's just like qua immigrants, they're kind of measured as healthy for the economy. And this or like calculating things this way is what led Johnson to panic and just import this vast number of people, thinking that this would goose the means of production, essentially, which is kind of an amazing chain of thought if you think about the logic that's at work there. And it is like the wrong kind of autism. Like you're talking, Matt, you're talking about the good kind of autism, which is just like this insistence on hard-nosed data without fear or favor. And we see like the other version of this where you kind of cook the books in such a way that you end up with things that make absolutely no freaking sense. But you insist, well, I ran an equation that shows that this is how this works. So in some ways, we're like pivoting toward from the bad kind of autism to the good kind of autism is one way of putting it. But we saw this GDP stuff too. You guys remember in the Biden years when they kept saying, well, it's like the economy is doing great. And then there was that piece that came out. Was it in Politico? Mike, do you remember? Was it in Politico when somebody said, like, look, there's so many things that aren't in GDP. For example, basic cost of living, like, is not factored into these economic.
Right. Yeah, it was in Politico, and it was a great piece because it was an economist basically saying, "Oh yeah, actually, what regular Americans are actually experiencing, like that's actually true, and just our, kind of raft of numbers, like that can't actually capture everything, and what we're actually seeing is actually far worse than what these kind of rosy numbers seem to appear." So yeah, so I mean, numbers are helpful in a way, but they certainly aren't, the end all be all. I mean,
Like,
that's
can there
hard to
be just one oligarch to rule them all? And GDP is great, but everyone else is the same. I mean, GDP is fantastic. I think that this is the kind of thing where, again, people are sick of it, and it might be there's a common sense element here that's hard to break. Like it's very easy to sit in DC land or these establishment think tanks land, and they talk about GDP and they talk about immigration and they talk about H-1Bs and they talk about all this stuff. But when you tell people that you're going to stop illegal immigration, real people, think you're actually going to stop illegal immigration. And so then when you get these carve-outs, like, well, wait a minute. We meant that in the abstract in a general way, but of course, the people who are working at this plant that we wanted to establish in America are not from America. People are pissed off. They're clued into this, and they're not having it anymore. And it really is a disconnect because the voter is like, I voted for this. Why are all these people on my side so upset about it? Well, no, we didn't mean to do that for real. Like, you can't go after the businesses who hire the illegals. I mean, what are you talking about? And I don't know anyone now. Like, I just so many people who are just on team or Trump voters. They're all, whether they're working in fancy jobs or whether they're regular people. They're like, what are we talking about? We're literally done with this. And it's like when Brooke Rollins came out with the looks like her, agriculture department's like, well, when it comes to farms and hotels, we can't. And people would be amenable to maybe like a drawdown or something, right? A gradated plan.
Mhm.
But it came out like, oh, well, we don't mean that industry because they need those workers. And you could just see America going, what the hell do you think we were just talking about? What do you think we just voted for? No. And if some of the businesses go out of business, like God forbid, that would be terrible. It'd almost be like tens of thousands of people losing their jobs. I mean, no one's crying anymore. And by the way, on the Wall Street Journal topic, uh, maybe that Rupert is gone and Blackland is taking over. Maybe they change these things, but the Wall Street Journal is incredibly out of touch. And I don't mean that in like the last 20, 30 years kind of way. I mean like they're not paying attention to even what people are talking about, kind of out of touch sometimes now. I mean, it's a real problem where this is an incredibly important piece of media property. And it's not only the party line we expect from them, but it's just like I mean, at least like Fox is trying, they have some clearly based people here who read my tweets and your guys' tweets and
Hmm.
whatever, and like get guests on or whatever. But they see that they need to move in a certain direction. But the Wall Street Journal, they don't seem to even realize that they need to move.
Hmm.
Does anyone else have that reaction? I mean, I'm getting sick and tired of looking over there going, you guys are so irrelevant. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, there's a real doubling down effect going on, and there is like the what did you people think ending illegal immigration meant? Vibes, papers, essays, losers, like that. Yeah, I mean that's totally the sense I get as well, and I feel like I only see people sharing the Wall Street Journal now as kind of like a what the hell happened to the Wall Street Journal. Maybe
Mhm.
that's just like a function of my own silent media environment, but I don't think so. I mean, I follow a bunch of people from a variety of places on the right. Um,
Yeah, it's kinda like when, like, the Drudge Report started to turn, and I get the same thing where people are sharing, like, "This was in the Wall Street Journal? What the hell are they doing?" I mean, come
Well,
on, like, this
yeah,
actually used to be, like, at least, good.
well, I mean, it still has plenty of people who write decent opinion pieces for it. But remember, the Wall Street Journal has always been on the sort of libertarian chamber of commerce side of the business question. So
yeah,
this is a not an anomaly. I would say
Right,
it's pretty consistent. Yeah.
that's
right.
a good point.
But like,
Well,
but like
it's
Barry
yeah,
Weiss of the Free Press at least has a vibe, like is in touch with what the relevant issues are, right?
that's
Percolating
interesting. Yeah,
throughout
she's
America.
aware how things are
Mhm.
likely to be
No,
received
fair
rather
enough. Yeah.
than
Yeah, and I
yeah,
guess my point is it's like they're not even, and you're right, it's probably nothing new under the sun. But you'd expect like some kind of pivot or turn, and it
Mhm,
still feels like it's 2014 or something over there.
mhm.
Mhm.
And
huh?
I don't know if Lachlan coming in is going to change these things, but they are. I was just talking to another great writer, journalist. I don't know if you appreciate me saying his name, a guy from the UK, and he was saying, he was lamenting the same fact, and we both kind of got on a conversation about it, and then started talking to other people, and it's just crazy how that's sitting there, and it could do some amazing things. Um,
Yeah,
you can see the New York Post pivoting and doing some amazing things because someone's got to respond to this in the media environment when you now we're at the point where you actually have Twitter just driving stories without even a leader, without a Trump or someone just is emerging from the people. They're
well,
so keen on these issues and they've left the legacy media behind.
it's rare that an episode of it's not rare, but sometimes episodes of the Roundtable are just freewheeling conversations, and sometimes a theme kind of gradually emerges over the course of the discussion. And this time, I feel that there really is a perfect kind of epigraph to this episode, and goes a little something like this: He opens his mouth, but the words won't come out. He's choking how everybody's joking now. The clock's run out. Time's up. Over. Blow. Snap back to reality. Oh, there goes political gravity. And with that, it's time for some cultural recommendations, ladies and gentlemen. I will start with you, Matt, since you are our guest. Do you have anything to plug or advertise for the people?
Yeah, I was thinking this. I had some super fancy things, but I am going to advocate for something very simple, and it is cultural. I am going to ask each and every one of you in the audience this fall to go live in person to a high school football game.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't cost a lot of money. Just go for a little bit. Go in, go to the little lame concession stand, go in the audience, and just watch a high school football game. Because it's in person, it's fall, you can smell it. The air has changed. I was on a trip to Israel and then DC and then got back to Dallas, and all of a sudden I could even feel it here. I was worried I'd come back to the humid heat. And I think that, go out and touch grass. Go out and touch grass. Like the best way to do that is often just to go out and experience some little slice of life. So this fall, it's outside. Go to a high school football game if you can, and just experience it for a little while. I think that's a good thing to do as an American, and it might calm you down. It might piss you off. I don't know, but I think it's a good thing that everyone should do. And then the second thing, corollary of that is, if you haven't been to live events, live music, or whatever it is, something live with people you don't know, you should schedule something else other than the football game, preferably music, this fall, because what you'll notice is that these events are actually gaining traction. People really want to get together in person. They can feel it in their bones, but nothing beats a football game in the fall in America.
I know somebody who has definitely been to a live music event recently, and even outdoors, and that's Mike Sabo, noted dad rock enjoyer. Mike, what's your recommendation?
Yeah, and actually, I just got tickets to another live event. So Alice Cooper and Judas Priest are coming to Cincinnati, and I cannot
Yeah,
wait.
they are.
I mean,
Attaboy.
Rob
True
Halford,
form.
the singer of Judas Priest, I mean, he's got to be early 70s. Alice Cooper is probably right there, even maybe mid 70s. It's going to be a great show, so I'm very much looking forward to it. So for me, I second the football reference, especially. I'm a huge Ohio State fan, so great to see, obviously, the beginning of their season go very well, especially against Texas. Key game. I think we poured 70, I think, on Grambling last week, but, I mean, obviously an insane mismatch there. So for me, it's really kind of returning to, reading some novels. I've been reading tons of theology lately, obviously politics too. So I just finished up finally In the Name of the Rose. And if you've never read that book, I would definitely recommend reading it. There's just so many levels and so many things that Echo is trying to teach and show and point out. And then also I'm reading, just started a novel, Last Summer Boys, which I think came out in 2022 to high acclaim. And it's about kind of a Pennsylvania town. It's kind of like Stand By Me, really, Stephen King's. I think it was a novella, and then they turned that into a movie. I think in the 80s, and it's very much along those vibes. So I've been greatly enjoying it. Adventure, kids outside running around, jumping off of like railroad pilings into swimming holes and that kind of stuff. So I've really enjoyed it so far.
Oh, that's an excellent rec. Thank you. As you guys know, I'm going on vacation next week, so listeners, I won't be here, but I'm definitely going to take Last Summer Boys with me. That sounds like a perfect beach read. Ryan, do you have any beach reads to recommend to me or other things?
No, I'm returning to the land of television, even cutting edge, television now in scare quotes because it's a transformed animal. But the new FX show, Alien Earth, which I've been enjoying.
Hell yes, dude. Great show. Sorry,
Wait,
to
this is
be
actually
so enthusiastic.
good. This is gonna be
I was
know
wondering
it is
too. Is it good?
shocking, but this is a good show. Yes, like
It's good.
in like a affirmatively good spin-off of
Yeah, it's I mean, I've always loved the Alien franchise, and so I've been sad to see its various declines over the years. Uh, but there's some high points there too. But this comes rip roaring out of the gate in good style. It's wonderfully shot, immersive. It's kind of I don't know, I think it's like a 2150 Earth future with kind of with some snow crash stuff mixed in. So you get a little vignette at some point where they're trying to update you on how they got to this place in the world, and normal democracy has failed. So they're in this kind of mega corporation, global intergalactic corporation oligarchy, or division up of Earth. So there's various mega corporations that run cities and all the rest, and a deep research ship crashes from one of the corporation and their geographic areas, crashes into a different one. And of course, there are specimens aboard, and you get sort of the tale of the ship's problems and how everything went wrong. And then also the nice, given our current times and debates over AI and transhumanism and everything, a big piece of this is the unbridled and unethically conscious pursuit of the world's, especially one in particular, the main one that we witness, the world's, whiz kid trillionaire who wants to gallop ahead with all transhuman technology, and the foreign ship with alien specimens crashing in his area is a wonderful news to him because he can get all this new alien tech, biological tech. That's how he views the problem. And of course, it's only 5 episodes in now. Things will undoubtedly go wrong for him, and I suspect he will come crashing down to Earth, and his hubris will cost him dearly. I will say that just as a microcosm, the best episode so far was the last one, last week's episode 5, which in and of itself is like an hour version of one of and would stand, I think, in the top 3 of all the Alien movies combined. Just that episode, so I'm enjoying it a lot.
I am
That
so
is
glad I did this show just to hear that, because I'm going to go watch that.
Yeah, it's good.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Run, Don't Walk. That is such an extraordinary performance. The guy playing the boy genius, who's, at first I thought he was like an Elon Musk stand-in, which was kind of annoying, but I actually think he's an X stand-in. Like he's Elon Musk's son if he grew up to be the worst possible version of himself. And there's so many good elements of that show, including the fact that they have noticed something not enough people appreciate, which is that the original Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie is an exceptionally creepy book and really unnerving and weird. And they use that as like a motif. At first, it started out kind of like, it felt more like a Blade Runner spinoff than an Alien spinoff. Like that part of it is much more in the foreground. And I was like, wait, do I actually want the creepy, gross aliens to break out of their cage and start rampaging? But then the face eating ensues, and it actually does tie in really beautifully with the transhumanist stuff. And man, it's so good. I'm so glad you recommended that, Ryan, because I've been wanting to and just keep not doing it.
And new little creepy aliens, which it's all red in tooth and claw, so it's not like they're acting together. They all want to kill each other too. So anyway, it's just lots of fun.
It's super smart because the monsters are very fleshy and kind of like they've got a kind of organic materialism about them. And of course, the humans are all like transcending their material bodies and becoming these bloodless cyborgs. And so it's a really like clever way of bringing, because I've always thought that universe, the mythology of the Alien universe, was kind of overstuffed. And this is the first time I feel like they've like tied it all into one narrative. Anyway, my recommendations for this podcast are about to get even more lowbrow than they have hitherto been, because we're starting a newsletter at the Claremont Review of Books, and it's just going to be wrecks of things. So I'm probably going to take all my highbrow like novel recommendations and stuff over there and just bring you reprobates my TV shows and the slop. Exactly. But that's probably a good thing, because so far the best response I've gotten from any recommendation on this podcast ever, I think, was the cocktail recipe that I recommended, the Too Soon. And so I want to follow that up now with a book. I promise I'm not an alcoholic, but I am sitting, the guys can see, in front of my bar. And I have a book here called How to Be a Better Drinker: Cocktail Recipes and Boozy Etiquette. I will cop to the fact that I found this book and this author on Instagram. She's her name is Hannah Chamberlain, and she does these funny kind of TikTok style videos about making classic and new cocktails in a way that is not so obsessive and difficult that you can't whip one up of an evening. But her book, which is on Amazon, is just full of great and kind of retro, like 50s, 60s housewife almost type recommendations for how to entertain with well calibrated cocktails. And I have been getting a lot out of it. So with that, we will thank you all for listening to the Roundtable. If you want to know more about all of our work, you can visit our websites at americanmind.org, ClaremontReviewOfBooks.com, and our DC-based Center for the American Way of Life at dc.claremont.org. claremont.org. You can donate to support all of our work at claremont.org/donate. And you can help this podcast out by rating, reviewing, sharing, subscribing, liking, giving us 5 stars, tweeting about us, texting your group chat, telling your mom, however you want to get the word out. We greatly appreciate it. It helps us a ton to keep doing this. And if you can't tell, we have a blast with it. So thanks again to our production and engineering crew, the brothers G, Jake, and Ryan Gannon. And thanks to you all for listening. We will talk to you next week.